We could be getting an extra year of Curtis Jones. Yeah, sign me up today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you guys that listen every day. I appreciate you more than you know. You guys are the ones that make the world go round. Wherever you're listening or if you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We got a few things we got to cover today. First off, the extra year of potential eligibility for Curtis Jones and how that works out and everything that kind of surrounds that whole situation. Then Iowa State men's basketball team will be taking on Morgan State on Sunday. So we're going to have to dive into that game a little bit. And then obviously the women went through a little bit of a tough patch there with their non-conference schedule. But going into the conference play, we got to break down, was that non-conference schedule a good call? Was that the right decision to make? Okay, so first things first. How are we going to potentially be getting an extra year of eligibility out of Curtis Jones? Why him? And also, why the extra year? What's happening here? Essentially, Diego Pavia, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, played 2 years at JUCO and then 3 years at Vandy. So that's 5 years of football, post-high school football that he has played. And now he's run out of eligibility. He went to the courts and said, hey, I don't think that's fair. JUCO, I feel like it's not the same thing as D1. And the courts were like, yeah, technically that's fair. I don't hate that take. And they ended up basically, I don't know what they do. Did they declare this? They basically said any years, 1 or 2 years or whatever it is, spent at JUCO will not count towards Division I eligibility. That's going to have huge ramifications across all sports in the entire everything, right? This is not only for Curtis Jones, but Curtis Jones did play at Indian Hills, which, if you're not familiar, is a junior college, JUCO. So technically he could, gain that extra year of eligibility. Played 2 years at Buffalo. Now this is his second year with Iowa State. So this is his fifth year of college basketball, I suppose. But that extra year, you can basically swap it out, right? So you can pull that Indian Hills year and just put it on top. So he could come back next year. And yeah, I mean, will he? I don't know for sure. You got to look at kind of what is he essentially going to do? He's got really 3 options. Continue to play basketball at Iowa State, continue to play basketball professionally, be it the NBA or overseas or anywhere. I think he's good enough for the NBA, but and then finally not play basketball at all. So those are really his 3 options. And realistically, if it were me, getting the opportunity to continue to play basketball in Hilton Coliseum in front of these Iowa State fans that are just the best in the nation, the whole NIL situation that you're a part of, I don't see any reason to leave. But honestly, and also, I guess I didn't even add in there, he could continue to play college basketball somewhere else, which I wouldn't love that. But technically that is an option as well. So if he chose, he's like, you know what? Iowa State, I don't think is the right fit for me. I would rather go to, I don't even know, Bama, just somewhere else that he could do that too, technically. So I think when you look at that, though, the legislation or whatever it is that passed, it's going to have bigger ramifications than just one guy who's going to get 1 extra year. It's going to essentially, obviously, it's going to make the general playing field of college players older, right? Because those 2 years that don't count, it's like taking 2 years off and then coming in to college as a 20-year-old, right? So then you've got 4 or 5 years from there. 24, 25, 26, not going to be that uncommon anymore in the college level, which is interesting for sure. And then also it's going to make recruiting tough, for high schoolers. I almost think that this was kind of the final nail in the coffin for as far as eliminating the transfer portal, or not the transfer portal. Transfer portal is not going anywhere. The walk-on programs. They shrink the roster size. The transfer portal, kind of levels out the playing field as far as the top talents going, to more universities as opposed to stacking up, at a Bama or a Georgia. And now with the JUCO deal, those guys just get to be in the program longer and effectively, in my opinion, will completely wipe out walk-on programs, which that can be a whole take for a different video, because that really gets me fired up. When I saw the news drop yesterday, I was like, I instantly just went into America runs on walk-ons. You know what I mean? So I was instantly fired up about that. That's not really what we're talking about here. I just think it'll be interesting to see, obviously the guys that are currently in college that are now getting this boost in eligibility. I don't think there's a better time in the history of sport or of humankind than now to be playing college basketball or playing college football or to be associated with a college in athletics. I think now is the time with NIL and, just everything the way that it is, because it's all kind of brand new. There haven't really been any huge rules set in place. And so if there is ever a time, now is the time to stick around, and we'll see more of that. I don't know exactly how it's going to affect the level of play. One thing, obviously, when you go play JUCO, you get an opportunity to hone your skills, right? To get better at your craft. And you also get to do it against some higher level competition. And then they come into, so it's just interesting, because then you come into these D1 programs and you're effectively a freshman, right? I mean, I don't know how that works with course load. I never played college athletics, unfortunately, so I don't really understand that whole side of things. But I do know they're coming in as far as eligibility wise as a freshman, but they're not a freshman in college like you would be coming out of high school. As a senior in high school, freshman in college, that transition, your level of play is a lot different than you go from senior in high school, 2 years at a JUCO, and then all of a sudden you're now a freshman for this D1 university. I would imagine we'll see a larger increase in general, I guess, talent or skill on the field, which is interesting because that was effectively what the transfer portal did as well. I think all of these moves are kind of pushing towards more parity in college sports, which I guess is good, and more talent just kind of across everything. But I'm not really sure how exactly that's going to play out yet. I guess only time will tell. Only time will tell with that. And obviously, what does Curtis Jones decide to do? Does he stick around? Does he transfer? Does he go to the NBA? Does he go to overseas? Does he go sell insurance or whatever? I don't know what he wants to do with his life, but sell insurance. My brother does that. Makes pretty good money. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know for sure. One thing that I do know, however, the Cyclones are going to absolutely dominate this weekend when they play Morgan State. But I will cover that more in depth right after this. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, the subscription tracker actually was huge. I wasn't quite sure what I was all paying for, so Rocket Money definitely pretty clutch in that regard. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Today's episode is also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the place to get your tickets. We're going to be talking about the Iowa State Morgan State matchup, and I'll be getting my tickets through Gametime. Okay, there's multiple reasons, but I've got a few picked out here that really stand out. The all-in pricing feature you can toggle on. Makes it so much easier. I don't have to do the math in my head, which we've talked about. I'm not a math guy. How much do the tickets cost? It just tells you right up front. Then the one I always talk about, I love being able to see my seat before I purchase it. I know in the app, it's got a picture. I can just see what am I going to be seeing when I sit in my seat after I purchase this ticket. I love those two features. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And seeing as how we cover the Cyclones, probably pretty important. We talk about Iowa State Cyclones taking on Morgan State Bears basketball, Hilton Coliseum. Going to be a showdown, one for the ages. And I can't wait to witness Iowa State close out their non-conference basketball schedule with a huge, huge win over the Bears. Right now, I think Iowa State's supposed to win this. They have like a 99.97% chance of winning this game. I looked a little bit at Morgan State. They are currently 6-8. 4 of their wins were against non-D1 competition. They just won their last game, but that was it was a good win, I will say, because the two games before that, they lost to Bowling Green and Xavier, and they gave up 119 points to Xavier and 102 points to Bowling Green. Not a great look there. So obviously Morgan State going to have a little bit of an uphill battle against Iowa State, who is projected to win. I think it's like 100-62. So, Iowa State here has a chance to basically right the wrongs that were done by the women in the UConn game, right? We can flip that script and just all of a sudden Iowa State's winning by 40, which is awesome. We love that. So not too much on the prediction side of this. I'm going to be honest. Sometimes I'll say, hey, I think the Cyclones are going to win this by 50 points. This is a situation in which they probably will win it by 50 points. They will probably win by 40, 45, 50 points. And that's not even an outrageous take. The question is, however, what does this game kind of look like? Well, when you're winning a game by 40 points, it's pretty simple. You play more of your bench. You play into the reserves a little bit. And, I'm okay with that. I don't want to see any guys get hurt against, Morgan State early in the year. We got a ton of conference play to get through. Then obviously Big 12 championship and March Madness that we got to do, right? So we got a lot ahead of us. It would be a bad time to just get someone hurt over a game in which you are up by 50. Like, we play the reserves, right? So one name that I wrote down in particular, because we've talked about Nate Heisey, we've talked today actually about Curtis Jones, some of these guys coming off the bench, absolute legends, right? They're really good at basketball. But this guy in particular, I would like to see kind of hit his stride in this game and then be able to bounce off of this game and into conference play, have some confidence, and make a mark with this team. He's been talked about a little bit. TJ Otzelberger's kind of mentioned he is getting some trust from the teammates. He's starting to build it, with himself. And who am I talking about? Brandon Chatfield. This guy, he came in against I know. I think he was in against Iowa, and then I saw, he makes the floor a couple times, and so when I saw him, I thought, man, this guy kind of slept on a little bit. Solid. He's not like dunking on people's heads or anything crazy, but he is a solid player. We're not talking about this guy enough. He's just not getting a ton of minutes, right? Like, I think he's averaging 3-something points in about 13 and a half minutes, a couple of rebounds. So hopefully, what I would love to see is this is the game where Brandon Chatfield gets his opportunity and he kind of feels out the vibes a little bit better, and he's able to capitalize and I guess get to a point where he's able to mentally help this team. Because I think he's physically gifted enough. Obviously, if you're playing for Iowa State, you're pretty good at basketball. Like, that's duh. That's a given. But I do think that there might be a little bit of like a a confidence situation potentially, from what it sounds like. Obviously, I'm not close to the situation, but obviously, if he can get that figured out, and this game is where he builds that confidence, that's great. Then same thing with I'm almost looking at this game like a practice, kind of, like almost like more like a scrimmage, for the starters, at least that is, guys like Taman Lipsy. So I'm not going to name the starters. I don't know why I started saying that. What I'm saying here is, the way I approach practice is, and I've always done this, was like at practice, that's where you make mistakes. Practice is where you try new things, you make mistakes. That's okay. Now, I want to win the game, of course. We should win this game. But when we're up by 20 and we haven't pulled the starters yet, this is maybe where we start trying out some new offensive schemes, maybe a few. I would not be surprised if we see just some outlandish layup attempts from, oh gosh, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. The headband. Anyways, sorry guys. This is the time for it. So I'm excited to see how badly Iowa State is able to dominate in this game, how badly they, I guess, kind of lay it to Morgan State and the Bears. I feel bad for them, but sometimes that's what non-conference looks like. Iowa State will be moving into conference play against, Colorado on December 30th, and then they'll play Baylor on January 4th. So a little bit of a break for the Cyclones here. And, got to round it out strong, right? This is going to be tough. Big 12 is going to be a tough place to play basketball for, conference play. Speaking of tough place to play, the women will be starting off their conference play here, effective immediately, their next game against Oklahoma State. So we need to break down, was their tough non-conference schedule worth it? Was it a good play? We'll talk about that right after this. It's that time of year. The college football playoff is back, and with the newly expanded 12-team format, it's guaranteed to be bigger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented by AT&T at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions at noon. Then the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Okay. Talked basketball, talked a little bit of kind of just college sports in general here at Locked On Cyclones, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I think this is the time exactly when we dive into the women's side of basketball. Was the non-conference schedule, the tough schedule that they've faced, worth it? Okay. Why? They're 9-4. Okay. I don't think that's bad by any means, but 4 losses is kind of a lot. But then you look at who they've lost to. South Carolina, 2 in the country. UConn, 4 in the country. Iowa, ranked. And UNI. I don't know if they were ranked or not. Either way, shouldn't be losing to both Iowa schools. What are we doing here? I didn't love that. But anyways, those are some of the best teams in the nation. Obviously, Iowa isn't at the same caliber they were last year, but South Carolina and UConn are, they might be facing each other in the final. There's a good chance of that. So, was this the right play? From a record standpoint, no. We've had this conversation around the college football playoff now, especially, obviously this year. Scheduling easier games, getting more wins, sometimes works out. Sometimes that's a good thing for you. I don't think that's the case here, though. I think we can kind of look over the 4-loss situation and kind of just move past that, if you will. Was this the right move from gaining experience? Probably. This is one of those things where we've talked about playing the best, opponents early. Does that get you ready to face harder competition at the end of the year? And I've said that with the men's team, is that our Big 12, gauntlet we have to go through is a good thing for when we get to the tournament to try to win it all, to bring home the national championship. I'd rather go in after playing harder teams all year long and being more adapt to their, the challenges that come with that, being on the road, facing big men, guys that can shoot like crazy, you name it. All when you play that many good teams, you're going to see it all. And I guess that's kind of where I'm at with this women schedule, Iowa State women basketball schedule. I'm okay with this. South Carolina, UConn, Iowa, UNI. UNI is not obviously on the same caliber, but sometimes you're going to slip up. That's just going to happen. I mean, Iowa State men are 9-1, so I think my biggest thing with this was it was kind of, I'm not so sold on it being like, yeah, this was a great play for two reasons. One, it was a choice, versus like Big 12, less of a choice, right? You have to play your conference, and when you're playing in a really good conference, that's not as strong of a point as this was almost such a reach that it was a confidence killer as opposed to seeing some of the best competition. Now, this is going to come down to the ladies in the locker room and where are they at mentally. So I can't speak for them because I just came back to me. Keyshawn Gilbert from the last segment. Keyshawn Gilbert's going to be hitting crazy laps. I wanted to clear that up. I know his name. I was not thinking of it. Anyways, the women, I can't tell you if this is going to hurt their confidence or not, but losing by 40 or 30, whatever it was, to UConn, it's tough. It's just and that game was so weird too because of that first quarter, which we talked about. But like South Carolina, just one of the best teams in the nation. Iowa, in-state rival. I love that we scheduled that game for sure. Just it feels to me like this is almost a bit of a reach where it's like I don't know. I don't hate it. I don't hate it because we're playing the best teams, and that's how you get better. And that's how you, adapt and you get kind of in the right mindset for an Oklahoma State, for a Kansas State, all of these teams that we have to face in the Big 12. And if you are, that caliber team, you're going to be facing a South Carolina, a UConn at the end of the year as well. So that it all plays together. It's all one big thing. It's not like you can avoid these teams forever. If you are at a national championship level, I would say it's a good thing. It's not a great thing, not a superb top tier A level talent play to do this schedule because you do end up walking out 9-4. And I think that there is a little bit of an element of like, are we that good? And I don't want that question in their heads at all. Any of our players for any of our teams, I never want that question floating around because that's where you're beat. If you're beat between the ears, you're done. If you're beat on the court, if the clock's not zero, it's not over, right? I don't know. I think between the ears is much more important, and I don't ever want anyone having those questions if they're an Iowa State Cyclone. They need to be absolutely locked in. We are the best of all time. That's how I think it needs to go. And I think that this non-conference schedule kind of floated the question out there. I'm sure that, obviously all of what they're saying in the media is this is great. We're more prepared than ever. But, behind closed doors, that's where I have the questions. I would be very interested to see what this team is thinking because that's tough. I mean, and then I'm not saying they shouldn't be thinking that because these are hard teams. These are really tough teams that they faced. So was it the right play? I don't know. You come out with 4 losses. It's a great time to bounce back though. Now we go. Now we're off to the races. Now we face the tough Big 12 gauntlet, and then we go into the postseason, right? So this is the time to do it. I think that this team can. I think, I've said I don't think this is one of the worst 4-loss teams out there. I think this is a good 4-loss team. I think that, we maybe need to figure out the scoring a little bit. But overall, I mean, Audie was double teamed basically the whole UConn game, still came out with 22 points. I mean, we found the 3-pointer towards the end. Obviously, starting 0 for 6 wasn't great. But Emily Ryan, with the assists, getting the whole team incorporated. I think this team is very good. I think we have the ability to make some noise in the Big 12 here. But we're starting, kind of behind the starting line a little bit here, which is fine. It's fine. This team can handle it. But if you were to ask me, was this a good decision? I'd probably say maybe. I'd say okay. It's an okay decision. I don't hate it. I don't hate it. I don't like it, if that makes sense. That being said, that's going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for sticking around with me and listening to me talk Cyclones, I guess. Until next time, Cyclone fans. Sayonara.